All right, so we've got a good 55 minutes or so to talk with Carmen Dunn. She's our guest for today on the Practitioner Spotlight. Carmen's a 2016 graduate from the FDN course. She had other things that she did before FDN, but we'll let her talk to you about that. And she's also in Canada, so any Canadians out there, graduates and trainees, questions about some of the unique aspects of working in Canada. Carmen's going to cover some of those today, I'm sure, when we talk. Her main focus is business professionals that are on the road to burnout. So I think a lot of us have either been there before. That's how we got maybe to FDN. A lot of people out there. So that's kind of her focus. So she'll get into that some more. But we just want to welcome Carmen Dunn to the call today. Hey, Carmen.
Hey, Brendan. Thank you so much for having me on.
Indeed. Thanks for coming on. This is great. I think we got to do a verbal final together a little while back, and I knew you had a lot going on at that point. So we're glad to kind of catch up with you and see how things have been since you graduated. So very good. So I was going to say, I was kind of alluding to a little bit of the group of people you focus on. So I think that ties in with your personal story a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your kind of your history and story there? A lot of us have health challenges. So how about revealing a little bit of what you've dealt with?
Right. So my background before I came into nutrition was I worked in the corporate world as a food marketer in advertising, so kind of a nice transition from food marketer to nutritionist. But like a lot of people in the advertising world or just the corporate world in general, I went through pretty severe burnout. And, you know, at the time, I just blamed everybody else for it. I thought it was the fault of my company. So I jumped ship, went to another agency, and that's when I realized that, no, the problem was within me, and I had to do something about it. So long story short, I walked away from my career. I moved 5,000 kilometers to go to holistic nutrition school, and that's when I learned about adrenal fatigue, which I had been dealing with for years. But of course, you know, I wasn't getting the help I needed in the healthcare system. No doctor was talking to me about it, and I didn't know what was wrong with me, and I just felt like this is who I was. I was meant to be tired all the time and gaining all this weight. So it was a pretty big, long journey that got me there, but I think that's how a lot of people end up coming into natural medicine, is they've gone through some issue themselves that hasn't been resolved in the healthcare system, and they end up kind of desperate, searching for solutions. So that was kind of what happened with me.
Makes sense. I think a lot of us can identify with that for sure. So how did you find FDN, or can you recall when that moment came?
Vaguely. I think I was at a workshop like 4 years ago, right after I had graduated, and I met another nutritionist from Calgary, and she had done this, and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I don't remember what I thought at that time, and then somehow I found some webinars online that were talking about functional nutrition. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And I did a call with those person to see how much their program was, and it was just way too much for what I could afford, you know, having just graduated. And then I don't remember how I came across FDN and Reed's video, but I did somehow. And then when I talked with Reed and saw the price point, I'm like, this is totally reasonable. And it was pretty much the same thing the other place was promising. So for me, it was a done deal. I signed up on the spot, and I'm so happy that I did.
Good to hear. I'm glad. We always have a pretty good response from people, not very many unsatisfied customers, if you want to put it that way. By the time they graduate, like I said, they're confident, feeling good about it. They realize the value of the course and what they've learned, and they can put it into practice. Is I think one of the biggest things. It's immediately start using this. If you've got an established practice, you add the FDN, the testing to it, or you start just as a pure basic FDN. Here's my framework. So very good.
Yeah.
So maybe tell us a little bit about.
Another thing to add to that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say another thing to add to that was that I had been practicing for a few years, and then I realized what I called generic nutrition. It just doesn't work. This one size fits all, or you know, just doing food alone wasn't working, and that's why I was kind of not desperate, but I was really searching for some other level of something to add to my practice, because I wasn't seeing these big enough shifts in people's health just by switching food around. And of course, in the day and age that we live with, people need immediate results or they lose motivation and they're not going to come back to you. So one of the reasons why I was so happy to find FDN is because it allowed me to add that extra layer of personalization and scientific tests to really find out what was going on with people. And that's when I started getting results.
Big point there. Exactly. So you did testing on yourself, I know. So what are some of the things that it started to reveal for you that you didn't know were going on?
Right. So when I did the 205, so that's the adrenal hormone test on myself, that was pretty scary because up until that point, I was pretty convinced that I was a very healthy person. You know, my menstrual cycle was good, my digestive system was good, my immune system was good. So I kind of went into this kind of cocky feeling like, oh, it's going to come back perfect. And then I think my total daily cortisol came back around 10, which 10 or 12 or something, which to put in perspective, I remember Reed saying if you hit around 10 with a person, you have to send them off to a medical doctor for a potential diagnosis of Addison's disease. So I think that really scared me when I realized how low my cortisol was. And to put this in perspective, when I was going through, a few years ago, when I was going through nutrition school, I was working with all of the instructors, the naturopaths who were helping me through adrenal fatigue. And I was taking every adaptogenic herbal product on the market. I was taking all the B vitamins. I was watching my stress levels and nothing was shifting. And so when I did the 205 on myself and I was working with my mentor, Whitney, I had a huge light bulb moment because at this time I had been on a vegetarian diet for 17 years. And, for ethical reasons, I was convinced it was the perfect diet for me. And Whitney helped me understand that, in order to be making your steroid hormones like cortisol, you need a ton of B vitamins. You need the dietary fats and the LDL cholesterol in order to synthesize your hormones. And unfortunately, the vegetarian diet just isn't rich in those nutrients. And, no matter how many avocados and coconut oil I was consuming, it wasn't enough. And so I did that test. Whitney started talking to me about, why I should maybe consider eating meat, but it was such a psychological mind fuck to say the least, pardon my French, but that's what I was going through. And then I combined that with, I had done a food sensitivity test on myself, and it basically revealed that I was, sky high reacting to dairy. I was reacting to majority of the grains, glutinous and non-glutinous, even things like buckwheat I was reacting to, and then most of the legumes. So if I can't consume the grains and I can't consume the legumes, how the heck am I supposed to be on a vegetarian diet? Because that's how you complete your proteins. So that was another layer that I had to go through. And then I did the metabolic test. And I remember laughing. I'm like, oh, watch the results come back that I should be on this, caveman meat-eating diet. And sure enough, it came back that I was a fast oxidizer, meaning that I was supposed to have high amounts of protein, high amounts of, the dark meat, lots of fats. I can handle the saturated fats and minimal fruits. And intuitively, I kind of knew that because when I'd eaten fruit in the past, I never really liked fruit. It never agreed with me, and I always felt like it opened up or whet my appetite. So I would never eat fruit as a snack. I knew that when I ate high-fat meals, I actually felt really good after. I didn't feel bad. And, I could eat 4 bowls of lentil stew or vegetarian chilies, and I'd still be hungry. So I knew that something was off. And so all of these things combined made me question, the philosophy. And I think a character of a really good practitioner is one where you always remain open to changing your opinion based on new information. And based on everything I was learning, I was like, you know what, Carmen, maybe the vegetarian diet isn't the best diet for me. And that was a really, really hard pill to swallow because I was dealing, psychologically, my brain just wanted to cry. But the scientist in me was like, oh, let's try something different and see if I can actually feel something different. But emotionally, I was going through a cacophony of emotions, but I decided to give it a try. And it took me about a year. So this happened about a year ago. And now I'm really believing that this is the right diet for me. And and the city where I live in Vancouver, we're very much a health conscious city. It's like either everybody in the city is vegan or on a plant-based diet, or the other half is they're all gluten-free and paleo. So I'm pretty much one of the only nutritionists, it seems, that's promoting a non-vegetarian diet here. And so now when all these people are saying, oh, plant-based is the healthiest, I'm kind of like, I'm not sure. I've got some new information that may shake up what a lot of people think. And what's interesting, Brandon, is when I look, I've been running the food sensitivity panel for over 4 years, and I've tested hundreds of people now. And the majority of people are all reacting to grains. They're reacting to the legumes, dairy, of course, but nobody's ever reacted to meat. I don't think I've ever had a client that reacted to meat. So that's really telling me something about our biology. And when I look, I don't, promote any one particular diet per se. As I always say, I'm not God. I'm not here to tell you what to do. But the one diet that I do consistently see results on people when they are coming to me with food sensitivities and gut issues and adrenal fatigue, it's some version of a paleo diet. It just hands down seems to work. And when I cut the grains out of people, we go to really clean sources of meat, lots of vegetables, the clean fats and stuff, and minimal fruits like the berries. Everybody sees results. They drop weight, the bloating and the gas goes down. And so I've really come into a new level of understanding that maybe this is our biology and we are meant to eat meat, as cruel as that may sound. So I've had a huge shift in my philosophies over the last year. But I've also seen a dramatic shift in the results that I'm getting with clients, but not just the results, the speed of which I'm getting the results. Like people are seeing it within 2 and 3 days. So I know for myself personally, that was definitely the best decision for myself. It's not to say that I won't help people on vegetarian diets, but I do have to manage their expectations. If they're coming to me for weight loss, they won't lose the same amount of weight as someone who will add in some meat-based proteins. So, yeah, lots of new info that I've been learning about lately. Yeah.
That's a big change. That's huge. You're right, especially 17 years.
Huge.
That's well ingrained in you to be eating that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost 2 decades. I think the bigger shock was all of my friends and peers who had known me over the past, almost 20 years. When they saw me eating meat, like people's jaw dropped to the floor. They were speechless. And like, I still get people saying, I can't believe you're eating meat. Like, who is this Carmen? So my friends and peers had a huge shock as well. It was funny.
Yep. I bet part of them was just like wrote it off, but then I'm sure some of them kind of came on board with you. I would think you would have that influence. Maybe a few of them would say, oh, if she's made this switch, maybe there's something to this.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Brandon, because I had a lot of fear that people were going to be like, see, I told you so, or laugh in my face, but nobody did that. Everybody was really understanding because they knew how hard emotionally this was for me. I'm a tremendous animal lover, and I will still fight for animal rights and, moving things into much better conditions for animals. Like, I won't stop with that. But the trend that I've been seeing, especially here in Vancouver, is I can't begin to tell you how many people I know that have been on either vegan or vegetarian diets, and they're all going paleo. They're all doing the bone broth, and they're going to the small butchers and getting the grass-fed beef and, the pasture-raised chickens. And so I'm seeing a huge shift of people shifting that way. I have seen a shift of a lot of these hardcore, self-described meat eaters also going vegan, but it doesn't last that long. But I don't want to judge people, and I don't like judging people based on what they eat. It's food, it's a diet, but it shouldn't be your persona. And so if people want to experiment, I think that's fantastic. I think we should all be experimenting until we find what works best for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. I think we've got like a food sensitivity test. We have metabolic typing as some scientific way to look at this, and also how your body feels, how it responds. I think you're right. We're combining all of these things together to say, okay, this is how you figure out what's the best diet for that person. That's the tools that we have at our disposal. Yeah, and I tell you what, my situation was not as dramatic as yours was, but I I did a big, I think I've shared this before on the call, but I was eating right before I found FDN. I think I found FDN about the same time as I heard about metabolic typing. I think maybe Bill Wolcott was on a show, maybe I think it was probably Underground Wellness. Sean interviewed him, he interviewed Reed the next day, and so I kind of was down this track of these two, Bill and Reed, these two guys, what they were doing. And I think I did my metabolic typing test first, even before I found FDN. And I had been eating for about a year as a vegan, thinking it was really just the peer pressure, I guess, that this is the best way to go.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily the animals or the spiritual reason. It was just this is probably the healthiest way to eat. And so I was eating that way, and it's kind of like you. I really wasn't thriving. I was losing weight, way much more weight than I needed to lose. My energy wasn't very good. Immune system wasn't healthy. Things just weren't moving in the right direction. But I thought, okay, just give it some time. I'm going to have a leaning out process. There's some shifts that are going to happen, and give it enough time. And then I took my metabolic typing test, and lo and behold, I was a fast oxidizer. I've tested, I think, 4 or 5 times since then. I always land on this protein side of things. So I remember eating red meat for the first time in maybe a year, and just was like, oh, I'm alive. You know, I've got the energy again. I've got strength again. So I was able to find, okay, I needed to eat a different way, and that made a huge difference. So metabolic typing was kind of the start of that, some kind of test to customize things, and then, of course, I moved into the FDN program and learned more about myself just as you did, and saw that helped just go to that next level. So right with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So was that the hardest part then, the dietary changes, or was it the supplements or the stress reduction side? What was the hardest part for you?
Of what, doing the program, or?
Yeah, you're on yourself. I should say, clarify that on yourself. What was the hardest? What was the biggest challenge? Was it the dietary parts, or was it something else?
I would definitely say it was the biggest shift for sure. It was definitely a life-changing or shifting moment for sure, going through the program, doing that. But I really equate it with something that was positive as a part. I mean, if it wasn't for that shift, I wouldn't be seeing the shift in my clients right now. So I'm glad I went through that. And, Whitney was perfect. She wasn't pushy or putting pressure on me. She was just, gently inviting me to experiment. And I like the fact that she was teaching me to understand of kind of like when you bake a cake, you have ingredients, flour, egg, sugar, whatever. And when you make your hormones, there's also ingredients. And the way that she described how to make the hormones really drove home that I need to be eating meat in order to be making these hormones, because it clearly wasn't working the other way around, because I'd been doing everything with all the other supplements and stuff, eating what I thought was a healthy diet, and my cortisol was at 10. So something wasn't working, and so I needed that wake-up call, if you will, to really make that change. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's terrific. Glad you made the jump and things are going well. So as far as the training goes, maybe give us a few things maybe that you kind of took away from the training. I think obviously that there's not one diet that fits all, but anything else, principles or light bulbs that went off for you during the course?
I think I really liked in the beginning of the course how Reed explained stress. There's the traditional stress that we think of as negative, but he also explained there was eustress. But all the different concepts around stress that he was explaining really helped me drive home and explain it better to my clients. And when I do speaking gigs and I'm doing presentations, like learning the things like how whether the stress in your life is real or perceived, your body is still going to react in the exact same way. So I think for a lot of people, especially women who are notorious for lying in bed worrying at night, when I understood that worry was just as negative on the body as if that stressor had actually happened, that was a huge wake-up call for me. And, also understanding the difference between real life and death stresses and superficial stresses. So I always say to my clients, like, whether you're stressed because there's literally, a cougar chasing after you on your hike, or you're stressed because UPS delivered your package to the wrong address or it's delivering it late, your body will also react in the exact same way. And I said, stop. We have to learn how to not let all those superficial stresses bother us, because they're having just as much of a negative effect on us as if we were in a life or death situation. Now, of course, it comes out in different spurts, like how much cortisol and adrenaline your body is going to release is dependent on the severity of that stress. But for me to learn that I was still putting my body through that negative reaction for these superficial stresses was really huge for me. And it's really huge when I do presentations, because I think people are starting to understand how much they are affected throughout the day. It's funny because I'll ask potential clients and I'm like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very high, where would you say your stress levels are? And most of them will be like, oh, not that much, maybe, 2 or 3, but really they're a 10. And it's because they've been living this way for so long that this has become their new normal, and they don't realize how much stress they're under. So I think the whole part on stress was really huge, because until someone understands the stress part, like the food's really not going to make that much of a difference until we can change the lifestyle and the habits and how we interpret things in life. They also have such a huge effect on us. Another thing that was really big for me was understanding the steroidal hormone pathway. One of the charts that was given to us, that I found was fantastic, understanding how, we all start with the precursor pregnenolone, and then pregnenolone, goes and makes our other hormones and then makes our sex hormones. I found that fantastic, and it really allowed me to explain to my clients why their progesterone is now low because of the high stress in their life, and how that's now affecting their menstrual cycle or their energy levels and, the lack of endorphins in their body. I actually use that chart. I teach at the local holistic nutrition school here, Institute of Holistic Nutrition. And so I actually used that chart when I was teaching my students about symptomatology. And that was like a really big wake-up call for them too. They're like, oh. So I share it with my clients when I'm doing the first presentation, so that when I'm showing them the results on their 205, now it starts to make sense why they're at the levels they are, because now they're starting to see how their body reacts. So that was something I really enjoyed. And then just learning about, all the different labs and how they each allow me to just get deeper and deeper into why people are having all these symptoms. Because you need to be able to get as close as possible to the root cause. Otherwise, you're just trial and erroring it and, wasting people's money and time. So we want to get as close as possible.
Indeed. Also, with the stress hormone pathways chart there, along with the brain-body diagram, that's 2 tools that I use with most everybody. You're right, to explain these concepts, because they work so well to talk about that. And it's not okay, take a pill and cover things up, or you're low in testosterone, here's some testosterone. It's more about, okay, why are these things present? And it's the stress we have to deal with, and that's the key. It's not this really specific, just raising levels and numbers and covering things up. It's this much bigger picture that we have to zoom out and look at, and stress comes into that too, the bigger definition of stress. So yes, those are all just great to have the foundation laid with people.
Oh, 100%, yeah. And they need to understand, and I keep reiterating that over and over, and I think they appreciate that. I'm like, I could technically give you some drops to increase your testosterone, or some, herbs to help with the progesterone, but I'd really like to go deeper to the root cause, which is working on the adrenals. And once the adrenals are repaired and we can alleviate the stress in your life, your body will naturally start repairing or balancing those hormone levels. And they're all like, yeah, okay, cool, thanks, And it also shows that I'm not just trying to sell them another supplement. Like, I'm really trying to get to the root cause, because otherwise we're practicing, what we call green allopathy, right? So, we want that more holistic approach, and I think the clients really appreciate that.
Indeed. So speaking of clients, what's kind of your main segment of the population you work with? Any age groups or certain conditions, or what does that look like?
So when I first started, I was targeting entrepreneurial burnout because so often within the first, 3 to 5 years of a business, people are just, they're dragging themselves through working crazy hours and they're burning themselves out trying to get their business or the passion up. But, after, I think it was last year, so after about 3 or 4 years, I was noticing that I wasn't getting the best results with them, and I was starting to get more corporate clients. And when I was working with a sales coach at the time, and when we were kind of hashing it out and lining up my entrepreneurial clients versus the corporate clients, what I noticed is that the corporate clients were getting better results. And so we were trying to figure out why is that. And I realized it's that when people have those 9 to 5 schedules, they've got a schedule in place which allows them to actually, put the protocol into practice and go to the grocery store and get the foods and take, the supplements on time. Whereas my entrepreneurial clients, their schedule is so all over the place that they weren't able to implement my program in as well. So because of this knowledge, I've now shifted to professional clients, predominantly females, but I do get, the odd male coming here and there. So maybe about 10 to 20% of my clientele are males. But yeah, generally female professionals, marketers, accountants, lawyers, real estate agents are who I'm serving. But that's not to say that if I get, some entrepreneur coming to me that I'm not going to help her. I am. I'm just, more carefully choosing who I go after to really get the biggest results for my clients. So in terms of personality types, like I really see, it's basically I'm helping myself. So I take my personality type and that's the type of woman, and I think we all do that, right? But it's, that classic perfectionist woman who's ambitious, she's highly driven, she wants the promotion, she may be described as type A or has difficulty letting go of control, because I understand those, but I also understand how those personality traits are what lead us to burnout. So quite often, well, it's interesting because with some of my clients, I find I'm spending more time on food and just in shifting the food and tweaking it to, their lab results. That's where we get the results. Other clients, I spend more time on the lifestyle aspect. So it's not so much their diet, it's more their lifestyle. They're eating when they're stressed, or they're skipping meals, or they're skipping breakfast, and it's more correcting the lifestyle that I find that I get further in helping them get results. So I don't know. I think we all have intuition on what each person needs. Like you could get 2 people coming to you that have exactly the same issue. They're the same profession, but their personality type is different, and you just know which approach to take with them. So yeah, I predominantly, it's the burnout. It's the women that have driven themselves to exhaustion. They're having difficulty sleeping at night, all sorts of digestive issues, the bloating, the gas, the bloating that gets worse as the day goes on, and weight. Predominantly, it's women that are looking to lose weight. So those are the 4 main areas that I focus on. And of course, there'll be peripheral things here like, I also have eczema, and then we'll deal with that. But right now, that's where I'm at. I am looking at potentially adding a program on fertility or prenatal nutrition for the simple reason that I'm pregnant right now, and so I'm going through these huge life shifts. So thank you. So I may be putting together a program. I know for years I've been asking my colleagues, I'm like, can any one of you specialize in children or pregnancy? Because I can't do it. I don't have time, and nobody's done it. And I'm like, screw it. Maybe I'll add on a new program for that now, because there's a really high need for that, especially with infertility. But also, I'm learning firsthand, like all the foods we can't eat as we're pregnant, and then all the foods you want to add in for those key nutrients at every stage. So something I'm toying with that I'll maybe consider adding on.
Yeah. Very good. I think there's a need for it. I would agree with that, definitely.
Yeah,
sure. The clients you talk about, just wondering about this, the kind of the professionals, have they tried a lot of other things already, like as far as self-medication over the counter, or some supplementation, or are they under the care of a doctor a lot of times trying to solve these things, or what does that look like?
Yeah, good question. So yes, there definitely is a pattern. Most of the people that have come to me have been to at least 6 to 8, sometimes 10 different practitioners. They've been through, various medical doctors, the clinics. They've gone to specialists at various universities. I would say most have been to at least 3 or 4 naturopaths and still haven't gotten the results. They've been to acupuncturists. They've tried a whole host of things. So I really seem to be the last stop for a lot of them. Unfortunately, I'm the last place they need to go because I can figure it out and get them the results, which is nice. In terms of have they been experimenting, some of them definitely have. Some have been trying the melatonin but haven't really seen results. Sometimes I see what I call arbitrary supplementation, which is the intention is good, is that they go to a health food store and they want to start taking, supplements, but they don't really know what they're doing, and they don't know, why they're taking them, and they also don't know what they're supposed to feel. So they'll come to me with a whole list of supplements, and I'm like, okay, is it working? And they're like, I don't really know, because they don't know what they're supposed to. But, they saw something on Dr. Oz, and they're like, oh, I'm going to go try this. So as I said, I think the intention is positive. They're trying, they're experimenting, which is good. But, it can also be negative, because a lot of times people will hear about, how bad cortisol is, and, oh, I have to take this, herbal supplement to lower cortisol. And unbeknownst to them, their cortisol is in the basement. So what they've been doing by taking those supplements without having worked with a practitioner is they're driving their cortisol even lower into the basement. So it can hurt them in some ways. I feel like when people go through, that chart we have, the stages of, what's it called? The HPA.
Cortisol and dysregulation. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With the skull and cross at the end.
Yeah, exactly. So the 4 stages, 0 being normal, and then 1, 2, 3. So I walk them through that, and I explain them what people feel in each of them. And I say that, in stage 1, people have high cortisol, but they don't actually feel bad. They actually feel really good. So they're doing all this stuff at work. They're homeschooling their kids. They're going to networking parties and events, and they actually feel good at that moment. But then when they get into the second stage, their cortisol starts to dip a bit, and, they start to get a bit more tired, and they start to need a bit more coffee, and now they start to get allergies when they didn't have allergies before, and their sleep issues are coming up, and now they have no libido, and digestive issues start coming up, like alternating constipation, diarrhea. So what happens here is that most people, to the advice of their partner or friends, will go to a doctor, and they basically tell the doctor, I feel like crap. I'm tired all the time. I can't lose weight. I can't sleep. I don't know what's wrong with me. And then the doctor goes and runs all the tests, and it's like, yeah, everything's fine. Your thyroid's fine. Your blood levels are fine of, ferritin or whatever. So they're left feeling like they're crazy. Something's in their head. And I find that at this point, the people go one of 2 ways. They either suck it up and they live with it and think that this is normal. Oh, well, I'm in my 40s now. I'm supposed to feel like this, Or the other half get curious and they're like, no, screw it. I don't want to live this way. And they're the people that go out and they start, going from practitioner to practitioner, trying to find somebody to help them. And those are the people that I usually get coming to me from a referral or something.
I think it's very common. I think you're right. It's kind of how I see it as well. That's what I mostly deal with, and I'm happy to help. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
So as far as challenges go, as far as what do people tend to struggle with, and maybe you can cover a few things you see there, and if you have some tips on how you combat those things, that'd be great too.
Like the challenges that the clients are struggling with?
Yeah, like what? Maybe
I
even just onboarding them in the first place. Well, more like your clients. Maybe on the onboarding process. So actually, getting them to work with you, and then once they're working with you, what kind of challenges do you see there?
Right. So I think if someone's come from a referral of someone who's actually worked with me, I don't tend to have too many challenges. They're usually a done deal. They're like, no, it's good. I want to work with you. But if they've they just saw my website somewhere, then I sometimes get the question, well, is this covered by insurance? And then I have to explain, well, no, we're not covered, we're kind of going through what the naturopaths and the chiropractors have gone through in the last 10 years. Like, we have to petition every province across the country, and it takes time. And so, I kind of laugh and I say, you just have to look at this as if you're investing in fine wine. Like, you're investing in your health, and, it's not covered, but let me tell you, it's actually going to do better than anything that is covered by insurance. If they decide to move forward with me, some challenges that can come up is motivation. So generally it's not an issue, but sometimes I'll get the clients that are so hard on themselves, and if they don't see results fast enough, they start to internalize it like there's something wrong with me, and then they just may stop booking sessions and ghost me if I, send them emails, they don't respond. So I feel like I have to very hard to bring them back on and, explain, no, this is normal. This is part of the process. 2 steps forward, but 1 step back. Like, it's normal, especially with weight loss. People can lose 5 pounds 1 week, but then they gain 2 pounds back the next week. And they're like, oh, I'm dumb. I'm bad. Why is this happening? And I'm like, no, that's part of the process. I mean, the most important thing is to look at the overall trend. And if the overall trend is the weight loss is going down, that's positive. It's normal. It's going to go up and down a little bit, but it's the trend. So that's a little bit hard. Sometimes I've had a few clients, very few, where the clients have followed everything in my protocols, to a T. They've taken all the supplements, they've eaten all the food, they're going to bed between, 10 and 12, and nothing budges. And then that's where it gets hard. And then I'm like, okay, well, what's going on at their work? Is it their stress levels that's holding them back? And they'll be like, no, I'm doing yin yoga 3 times a week. I'm going for a walk with my dog and my husband after work. Why isn't anything budget? So that has been a little bit challenging. So I've sometimes consulted with friends of mine who are naturopaths. Sometimes I think it's something that's beyond what I'm able to help them with. Like, if it's PCOS or something, then I'll refer them off to a naturopathic doctor. But it's very, I've maybe only had 2 people where I've had that issue out of the hundreds that I've had. But I mean, there's always going to be challenges that are going to come up. It's never going to be 100%. You're going to hit it out of the park, right? And that's how you grow, and that's how you learn. And whenever a challenge comes up, I just try to find a colleague. The FDN program was really good for me because I could bring these cases up with my mentors. But yeah, for the most part, I find that because I'm not cheap to work with, I am somewhat expensive. I find that because they've invested, they do the work. But, I've talked to some, entrepreneurs and stuff who charge, $25,000 to join their programs. And they're like, even at that price point, some people just fall off. So yes, the more you charge, the better follow through you'll get. But it's also human nature that some people, they'll just stop coming, and it has nothing to do with you. It's just they're too busy in their life, or, maybe they'll come back in 6 months or something. So, but I can sometimes personalize that, like, oh, maybe they didn't like me, or I should have done this better. But, I'm wise enough to know that it's not me, and it's just human nature, and there's always going to be a percentage of people that will just drop off, and it has absolutely nothing to do with you. So I think I'm getting better at it. The key is really just to have a support system or other practitioners you can go to bounce ideas off them, because it's inevitable at some point.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's for somebody out there in the audience, so that's just struggling with that. I believe totally that, we can't take it personally always. We do the best that we're able to offer, and they're just things that are out of our control. There aren't really that much we really do control, honestly. We can coach, and we can encourage and give tips and tricks and support, but still up to them really to make those changes and follow through with it. We're just the educators when it comes down to it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there was a point a few years ago where I felt like I had to know everything, and beyond just nutrition or health, I had to know everything about their work. Like, I have to know and be an expert on how they should talk to their boss if there's conflict, or how to communicate with colleagues. And then I was just like, frick, Carmen, I can't learn all of this. That's not my job. And so often I find that you want to be able to help them with all of their stressors in life, but it's not up to me to teach them how to do that. it's not to say that I can't be reading books and recommend, oh, here's a really good book from Tony Robbins, or here's a book written by a medical doctor that talks about stress in the workplace. Like, we can refer them to different books and resources, but it's not up to us to know how to fix all the problems in their life. And that was something that I thought, you know, as a recovering perfectionist, that I had to know. But now I think I'm a lot more gentle with myself, and I'm like, no, they're coming to me for the health piece. And it's up to, you know, intuitively people know what they need to do, and it's more about asking them questions. Well, what do you think you need to do, as opposed to thinking that I have to be the one to tell them everything and this is what you should do. That's not the way it has to be.
Second excellent point there. That's really big too. That's what I feel like that even people that graduate the course are like, all right, I'm going to take my next course now. Yeah, we always encourage additional education, and taking an FDN advanced course, another course is great, but rest on what you have right now. You have enough information to do a whole lot of good, and then you're like you said, your client's going to tell you some of the answers. Use questions, figure some things out, talking together. It's not I've got to have something that I've learned or studied in a course as much as it is just working through and doing the coaching and talking and the process that we walk through. So that's a huge point. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Tony Robbins, or someone else, but I was listening to one of his audiobooks last week, and he was saying, you know, one of the reasons people jump from practitioner to practitioner is they're always externally focused. They're always looking at someone else to help them. And he's like, the answers really truly lie within ourselves. And so it's about, you know, motivating people or encouraging them to, you know, kind of step up and intuitively know that they can take care of everything, and learn what to do for themselves, and they know what's best. I mean, that's not to say that they shouldn't be hiring someone like us as an expert to help them with their health problems, but when it comes to all these external issues in their life, we all intuitively know what we should do. We just don't trust ourselves. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yes, it's good advice. So when it comes to the business side of things, do you have some advice as far as maybe somebody's just graduating the course or just starting business possibly, or wanting to make some tweaks to the existing business? Any wisdom that you have to share with your journey?
Well, I would definitely say try to create some sort of support system with other practitioners, so that when challenges come up, because it's inevitable, they're going to come up, to have those people in place that you can ask. And if you don't have anyone, then, you know, be willing to pay for someone. Like one of my instructors when I was in nutrition school, he's a naturopath, you know, I offered him, like, can I pay for your time, you know, once a month to run, you know, case studies off you? Or, you know, if you don't have the money, be like, you know, can I buy you lunch once a month and just pick your brain? Or, you know, joining like the association like you guys have put together, and you have the medical director, I forget what you call it, but the medical director consult you can buy to, even if you haven't run a lab, that'll be good. The second thing that I would hands down 100% recommend is get a business consultant or coach. I can't emphasize this enough. Unfortunately, out of my entire graduating class, I am the only nutritionist that's practicing in terms of consultations. A few of the girls went into food prep and stuff, and that's awesome because I can refer to them. But in terms of consulting, I'm the only one, and part of the reason is I embrace the business side. And I find that a lot of nutritionists, they never think they're good enough, so they're like, oh, I'm going to go do my yoga teacher training. I'm going to go learn, you know, raw food, vegan prep. I'm going to go to Bali and study the spiritual practice. And like, okay, that's great, but what you're doing is actually, the more you're learning about all these other modalities, you're actually weakening your offering, because now you're not a specialist in anything anymore. And you also need to embrace the fact that you are first and foremost a business owner before you're a nutritionist or an FDN practitioner. So because I had come from the corporate world and I made the decision to go back to nutrition school in my 30s, I was taking a huge risk. Financially, I was walking away from, you know, a big salary. I left my partner. I left my friends. I moved 5,000 kilometers. Like, I didn't want to spend 5-10 years figuring this out. I'd never been a nutritionist before, and I had enough wisdom to know I need to hire someone that's done this before. So I've been hiring various business consultants that have dramatically helped my business, because we're not meant to be an expert in that. We're meant to be an expert in health. So by having someone help you with that is invaluable, and it's, the best investment you can make if you want to continue, because in order to help people, you have to have a thriving business. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to help those people. So I would definitely recommend looking around for someone that can help you. There are business coaches that have a health background, so that's really good too, because then they understand the complexities of which we're working within. But yeah, definitely embrace the business side.
Good point. Reed's said this quote before. I can't remember who says it, but it's no margin, no mission.
Yeah.
So if we don't have the income coming in, we're not making the profit, we can't help that many people. You limit yourself on who you can help and enjoy that whole process. And I think, too, you're right. That's a shift, I think, for a lot of people. The next course they want to take is always another health course, which that's a good thing, but maybe you should invest in a business course if you really want to do this. You're right. You are really a business owner first. That's really a really good point. So invest in those type of things, the personal development, the business side, the entrepreneurship, any of those things. Those have made a huge difference in my life too.
Yeah, and you're right, Brandon, about the personal development part, because in any business when you start it, I mean, we are entrepreneurs. We're not part of the medical system, right? So we're on our own in a way. And every entrepreneur is going to go through that mindset. The negativity is going to take over. Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm not a doctor. Oh, I'm not this. And we also need to be as much as we need to be exercising our physical body, we also have to exercise our brain, our mindset. So, investing in, either audiobooks or going to workshops and conferences. Like Tony Robbins is coming here next week, and I'm going to see him to get a boost. But constantly being out there with other entrepreneurs and health practitioners and doing the personal development, because that's also going to help you as well. You got to keep that positive mindset.
Yes, it's important. It's huge. I think one of the reasons I think a lot of businesses fail, it's not so much the business model was necessarily bad or they had a bad product as much as there's something emotional or mental that's breaking down on the inside than it is really just truly the business model. So we know FDN works. It's a good business model, but is there something, like you said, coming back to the answers are inside of you, or the area or the problem, or maybe the area to work on could be inside you too. So we've got to be honest with ourselves. Yep.
Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. Yeah, good point. So let's see. So what about comment maybe on, and I think it kind of goes in the same vein here, what about thoughts about money and charging and rates, those type of things? Did you have some evolution as far as that goes, what you charge people?
Yeah, definitely. I had a huge shift because when I started out, I was like some of my other colleagues. It's like we took a calendar of the month, and we're like, okay, if I charge $80 an hour and I have 8 clients a day, how much money can I make over the month? And I'm like, God damn, I'm going to have to work a lot to make not a lot of money. And my first business coach, the first one I'd hired, she kept pushing me to be like, Carmen, get away from the session model, build a program, and you have to raise your rates. And I had all this fear and all this negative mindset came up, and she was right. I ended up signing more clients when I went from $80 an hour to I think $2,000 for my program. That's what I started off with. And then it sold like hotcakes. So that was a huge wake-up call for me. And then there's also the value is there's higher perceived value to the client that, if I'm going to invest in a program, it's a flat fee. The flat fee part helps because I think like if we're going to any type of practitioner or even a lawyer or something and they have an hourly rate, you kind of get this anxiety of like, oh my God, how much is this going to go up? But if you come in with a flat fee, then it's kind of like, oh, okay, I could budget that and do a payment plan. It makes it a lot easier on their budgeting as well, but there's also that perceived value that it's worth more. And I've just found that I've attracted better clientele because the people that are willing to invest in their health, they will do the work. It's the people that will do $80 here, and then it's like, oh, this is too tough. They give up. They never come back. But if they're invested financially, let me tell you, they're going to come back. So not being afraid to raise your rates. And it's funny because now if I go to a practitioner or something and it's, X amount an hour, I it's not that I look down on them, but I actually question, I'm like, oh, are they good enough? They're only charging $70 an hour. Like, oh. So it's funny how my mindset has changed around other practitioners too. But if they're charging in the thousands, I'm like, okay, they value themselves. This must be good. And I haven't really had issues. Like if you're targeting the right clientele, it shouldn't be an issue for the most part. So yeah, I would definitely invite people to experiment with how much they're charging, their value, and knowing that when you come out of the FDN program, you have so much more knowledge to that you have to charge what you're worth.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Exactly. Well, I think some of your marketing background, I think, kicked in with your website. So if you guys have not been to Carmen's website, it's a beautiful website, I have to say, by the way. So it's Carmen Dunn, DUNN.com. So you guys go check that out, see what she's doing there. So beautiful website, definitely. And I noticed, too, I don't know if this is even something you want to talk about, but I noticed there's a client login link up there. Is there, do you have you use technology for your clients? Is there things that they log in and get with the program? Do you want to talk about that a second?
Yeah, I built like a back end where I had like videos for the intro of my program and documents and everything up there. To be honest with you, I've actually shifted away from that to simply using Dropbox and putting documents in there. I had this vision that, I'd look more professional if I had this back end. The reality is people are so busy, they don't have time to remember logins and passwords. So when I just send them a folder with Dropbox, it's actually made it easier for them. And at the end of the day, it's not about what I look like. It's not about me. It's about them and what's easiest for them. So I've actually shifted away from that.
Yeah. Right. Good tip there. Good. Excellent.
Yeah.
I just happened to see that. I wanted to ask about it. So.
Yeah.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes left. So maybe if you want to just talk a little bit about how you market yourself. So what ways do you get new clients?
So speaking has been really beneficial for me. So getting out there, I've done my speech enough that I've tweaked it enough to be able to deal with any objections people would have. And I can usually convert a good percentage of people in the room, which is really nice. It's kind of like how they say, like, you don't really know how well something's going to work till you do it. And then you're like, crap, why did I waste 4 years not doing it? But when I actually did my first speaking engagement and I sold programs from the stage, that was a huge wake-up call to me. And I'm like, why haven't I been doing this? Like, it's so easy because you have to work a lot less hard when people meet you in person to sell your program than online. When you're promoting yourself online or with webinars, you have to work so much harder for them to know who you are, to trust you, than when you're in person. So I found speaking really is the best way. But that's not to say that I don't still do online things. Facebook, even my personal accounts on Facebook still bring me people. Personally, I like Instagram just because it's a better reflection of me personally. And then I have played with webinars and stuff. I haven't done anything lately, but you'll want to experiment with everything that's available to you and see what feels best and ultimately it's what works best. And now I'm at the point where I am getting referrals from past clients or people that know me, but that's something that doesn't happen right away. That takes time. So I think I've now put in enough work and effort and years that I'm starting to get that. And referrals are, of course, the best source of leads because they usually convert the highest. When somebody tells you, go to Carmen, she'll get the job done, people trust it and they don't question you on things like price or insurance. They just buy. So, so just keep focusing on doing the best you can with every client, checking in with them, making sure they're satisfied all the way through, and not being afraid to ask for referrals too. Just experiment, see what works best, but really get yourself out there. Videos work really well for people. Sometimes I'm too shy. I haven't been doing too many, but I'll maybe get back out there and do more videos because that works really well, just putting a lot of content out there. And blogs can work really well because they'll get your website out there with SEO and people will find you. So, lots of things.
Good. Very good. Good tips. Well, closing minutes here. Anything as far as you talked about this, the prenatal or that type of program. Anything else that you're doing right now you want to tell people about? So I don't know if you're writing a book or a new program or anything that you're doing right now you want people to be made aware of.
Oh, I wish I had something to share. I don't. I am researching topics for a book with my consultant right now, but I'm just kind of in the research phase, trying to actually have something worthwhile to write about. So, but I'm not putting pressure on myself to put one out there in the next year, because if I'm going to put something out there, it's got to be of substance. So I'm toying with researching like personality types and who burns out and who gets results. So I find that really interesting to me. But honestly, right now, I'm just trying to get through my pregnancy, which has been a huge challenge that I was not expecting. So every day that I can actually answer my emails, I'm happy right now. So, yeah, I'm just kind of prepping for what I'm going to do during mat leave and how I can still work. That's the biggest thing on my plate right now. But the nice thing about doing what we're doing is there's always something you can do. There's always an ebook you can write. Like, it's really great if you're a creative person, because all the experience you get from your clients you'll put into case studies or write about. So it's really fun. You'll never be bored in this industry, that's for sure.
Point. So that's good. I agree. Focus on the baby. That's the main focus right now. Good. Take care of yourself and baby, and have a good experience there. So that's good. Practice what we preach on when it comes to those things. So very good. So congratulations again on that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Carmen, thanks again for being on. You laid down a lot of great information. Thanks for sharing, being on, and I'm sure you guys got a lot out of this. I know I did, and good reminders, and just hearing another person that's out there doing this work. And we just encourage you guys are just graduates, jump out there and do this work, and just again enjoy being with you guys every Friday. Pretty much, we're on. We'll be here next Friday too. I'm not sure what's on the docket, but we'll have a good show for you guys. And I guess until next time, you guys have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks again, Carmen.
Thanks for having me. Bye.